Hello, hello, hello. We are going to spend today talking about how I make textured collage backgrounds like the one I've been using to make my beautiful queen here. I've been promising it during the 2 painting sessions we've done on the queen, so it is definitely time. Let's talk a little bit first about supplies. The first thing I like to do is get out either a mixed media or watercolor block. And a block is a pad of paper that's been glued along all sides, except for usually just a little gap at the top or bottom. In this case, it's at the bottom of the pad, where you can stick a palette knife in, run it around when you're ready to remove your paper. I prefer to work on blocks, whether I'm watercolor painting, acrylic painting, or anything else, frankly, because I like the way that they hold my paper down and I don't have to fuss and fiddle with tape. And as much as I know it to be true that I can use a heat gun if my tape isn't removing easily, and I can use things like low tack tape to prevent it from ripping, I still run into problems with tape ripping, with paint getting under the tape. I also tend to like to work in stages, which means I want to be able to remove my work from my space really quickly. So if I use a piece of paper instead of a block, or if I use a pad, then if I tape it down, I've got to tape it down onto something I can remove and move, and I'd have to do that for each subsequent piece. And at the end of the day, I just find blocks easiest to work with. This is a Soho brand. It's fine. It's cold press. It's not my favorite surface to work on. I do prefer hot press in most cases. Cold press just means that the paper's got a little bit of texture. Not sure if you can see that all that well. Yeah, you can see some texture on the paper versus a hot press like my Stonehenge here. And when I show you that, it's much smoother. I like a smooth paper surface. You do you. This actually came free when I eBayed some watercolor palettes, some used watercolor palettes. They sent this along with it, so just kind of been working on it. The surface itself doesn't matter as much when we're doing a collage base because we're going to cover it all the way up with something anyway. So cold press in that case doesn't bother me one bit. Besides that, we're going to glue down our paper using something like matte medium or matte gel. This is not something where I would ever use a glue stick. You could theoretically use PVA glue. And I am a big believer of use what you have. So if you have Mod Podge or PVA, like Elmer's, use it if that's all you've got. But frankly, I think you'll be much, much, much happier with the results and with the painting surface you get if you use something like matte medium or matte gel. So by all means, if you've got these, highly recommend using them instead. And you'll see part of that is because I go over and under the paper. And I really get it in there. It's also going to give you a nice archival finish. It just really does everything you want. This matte medium is kind of liquidy. The matte gel, more like a hair gel. So that's the difference. I usually use matte medium for thinner papers. So that's your tissue paper or lightweight copy paper, stuff like that. And matte gel when it gets thicker. And I even have like an ultra heavy matte gel if I'm using something really heavyweight, like this watercolor paper here, for example. So you're gonna wanna have your glue. Obviously we need paper. I am always collecting scraps of paper. This is a little bin where I just throw it as I rip it. I also have this big container, there we go, of stuff that I dump paper scraps in as I go. I'll pull a few out for you. That is going to include things like book pages. Don't yell at me, that book was dying anyway. No one was going to read it. I promise you, this is giving it a new and more exciting life. We've got, you can see the insides of paper envelopes, tissue paper, bits of napkin. It looks like this was part of a Chewy. For those of you in the US who have pets, Chewy order for cat food and dog food. So, you know, there's some, this is heavier than I want to use today. That's some green cardstock. So I'm just going to set that over and kind of make myself a little pile here so I can come back to it. I've even got this blue, and I will use just about anything. It does not have to go together. And that is because at the end of this process, I'm going to go through with some gesso, like this Liquitex Basics acrylic gesso. This is something that they use to prepare surfaces for acrylic painting, so you can understand why it feels like exactly the right surface for me. Let me see if I can increase the light a little bit. We have had nothing but storms here the last few days. It's been pretty crazy. It's super cloudy outside today, so my light is just not great, but I think this has helped. So we've got this gesso. Wait, I use white. They also come in black, clear, and you can tint it with any paints you have or acrylic inks. So if I wanted to, see, this is beautiful phthalocyanine green blue shade. If I wanted to add this into my gesso and tint it, I could. It's compatible with all acrylics, so you can kind of go wild, but I'm just going to use straight white so I get a nice base surface for a future painting. Finally, it helps to have something like this palette knife, which is what I usually use to spread my gesso. This old credit card, I think this is actually a prepaid Visa once upon a time, or this little kitchen scraper. I highly prefer my card. I know it's a super fancy supply. It is honestly one of my favorite painting supplies. And then I like brushes to spread my matte gel and lay down and glue down my papers. Some people do prefer to use a knife or a card. I just find that I really like the way the brush feels and like how it works in. But I do usually go for one with nylon bristles. This was one of those pencil erasers where it's an eraser in the shape of a pencil. And this brush at the end is meant to help, you know, brush away pencil or eraser shavings. I really didn't like this eraser, so I'm just going to use the brush. I've got some cheapo ones here like this. They work okay. Sometimes the bristles do come out. It is annoying, so I'm always on the lookout for the best nylon brushes I can find. You can use a regular paintbrush. I just highly recommend against using your best. Products like matte media, matte gel, and gesso are pretty hard on your brushes, so you do not want to take your 20 or 30 or gosh, $100 brush and use that to do something as imprecise as spread medium around on your canvas. But that's what we need to get started. I do like when I do things like this to have sort of a mix of surfaces. Now, the truth is, this is giant, and it is because I use a lot of it. I have done myself a big favor, and since this is so liquidy, I just put it in one of these little squeeze bottles, and then I can use a little bit at a time. So I'm going to put the big bottle away. And I think for most of the papers I'm using today, this is going to work just fine, but I've still got my matte gel hanging out if I need something heavier, and that is in a little jar situation, so I don't move that into another container unless I buy a big jar at once. If I get a really big jar, I will often scoop some into a very small container, just so I'm working with something that's fairly small and manageable. So To start with, I am going to put some of this liquid stuff down. And this is some of that packing paper you get when you order things online. I will tell you, these days when I order products online, especially craft or art supplies, I am just as happy for the packing material as I am for the thing I actually ordered. And that's because packing material is wonderful for things like this. Collage paper, yay! For junk journaling, just all kinds of good stuff. Now, what I do try to avoid is putting too much of the same paper down next to one another. If I'm planning on mixing it up, I do try and put down different types of paper. So this is a little bit of book page here, and I'm layering it kind of on top of that packing paper. And then you'll see I'm going over top of it with the matte medium, in addition to putting the medium underneath it. And that just makes a really nice surface to paint on later. So I'm put a little bit more of the medium down, spread it out, put this chewy invoice down. I didn't overlap that one as well as I like. Let me grab some tissue paper, just some random tissue paper I had here. Put that over top. And ultimately, what I am looking to do here is just create a really fun, lightly textured surface to paint on. So I am trying to get the air bubbles out. I am not one of those people who's super freaked out. If an air bubble happens, an air bubble happens. But I am trying to make it as flat as possible. So you'll see now I'm grabbing my card, and that tissue paper is really, really fragile. So it ripped, no big deal. It just adds to the character and the texture. But I'm trying to just push down any air bubbles that might be coming through. I've picked up a little bit of ink. It looks a little dirty right there. No worries. I don't really care. All of this is going to get covered over with my gesso anyway. But really the process is just this. I'm going to spread some matte medium, put down some paper, cover over it with some more matte medium, and occasionally go over it with my card to get it nice and flat. And that's really all there is to this entire step. I think this is some tea bag paper. I love this stuff. The more you play around with paper and paper crafts, the more you realize how much different types of paper there really is out there. And it is all special and wonderful stuff in its own way. I love paper. All kinds of paper. See, that tea bag paper's got some texture to it. It's got a little bit of heft, but it's still somewhat translucent once you put it down. That's really nice. Gives some great effects when you're doing collage work or using something like a gel plate to make some jelly prints. There's some more of that packing paper. I'm just gonna keep on rolling through. Lay down some medium. This is fairly thick envelope paper. It may not want to cooperate with my lighter medium, but I'm gonna try. You can see it's sticking up. I don't want you to stick up. Get down. Get down there, my friend. Here, I didn't have a whole lot of medium down at the bottom of this, so I'm gonna pull that through. Yeah, it's working. It's doing what it needs to do. Ooh, I did not expect that to bleed any color, but it's bleeding a little bit of brown. Interesting. Cool, huh? So just to show you all, here's the difference with the matte gel. You can see that's nice and thick. If I'm literally scooping it out with my brush, if I put that down, it is probably going to have an easier time grabbing onto this paper than the more liquidy medium did. Here, let's put that right there. And yep, it holds it down so much faster and easier. So I had a feeling it would do that for me because it usually does. But the more liquidy stuff worked just fine too. So use what you have, make it work, and keep on going. And this is really all we're gonna do. Just keep on layering. And I am prepping these surfaces because, oh, got a little bit of, that just looks like fuzz there. We are going to continue to work on our Alice in Wonderland characters. And so I want to have some more surfaces ready to go so I can work on more than just my queen. A lot of times when I work, I really do have several pieces going at once. And so it is much more typical for me to work on the queen for a little while, and then while she's drying, pull out Alice and work on her for a little while. And then while that's drying, pull out a different surface and work on the white rabbit or something else entirely. And so I'm trying to get a few of these ready to go so we can continue to make really good progress on that series. And so I can work on more than just the queen at any given time. Although she is nearly done, at least this version of her. And so it's good to have these prepped and ready since I know I'm going to do this. Not all of my work starts with a collaged background like this, but definitely all of the Wonderland series is going to. Now, one thing I do have that's interesting, not for this particular part of the process, but for later, I do have a very old copy of Alice in Wonderland that I anticipate using in some of my future work, but I am saving that for collage pieces that are going to be more visible. So this is all going to get covered over in gesso, right? So I don't want to use text from Alice in Wonderland. Well, hello, Sasquatch. This is my cat, Sasquatch, or Sassy, and she likes to paint with me, which is problematic when we're using glue because it gets in her fur. Hello, sweet girl. You gonna sit over there? Okay. If you can keep your tail out of my work, I'll keep going. Oh, no, you don't want to be out of the work? You want to interrupt mommy? Huh? Is that it? You want to be part of the process here? What are you doing to me? What are you doing to me, little girl? I knew you would do this. You're beautiful. Everybody's going to love looking at you. They're not going to want to watch me paint anymore. You're much more interesting. You're much more interesting. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. What's this? Yeah. Show the people your beautiful face. Oh, okay. I think we're going to have to take a break. All right, we're back with a little bit of TV magic. I figured I could turn the camera on when Sassy was done with me, which for the record was about 2 minutes after I had to stop the video. And you all could just watch me continue to cover this surface. And I wanted to do another one, so 2. Or I could go ahead and do that off camera, bring you back, show you what it looks like. So this is the one I started earlier. Nice and dry. And then after that, I did this one. Really good stuff. I use the small pieces, again, because the main goal for this is to get this sort of textured background that we're going to work on, that surface. And so if I just did a few big pieces of paper, I might get a little bit of tone peeking through the gesso and some stuff like that, but I'm not going to get quite the same sort of random texturized surface I'm looking for. So I really like to use up my teeny tiny, not very interesting scraps for this kind of work. And that's why I have that big tub that I'm constantly shoving paper in. So this one still needs to dry. I'll move that out of our way. But this one is ready to get covered in gesso. Hi, Sassy. You are a very needy girl today. What you doing? Don't drink the paint water. Put you down. Yeah, I'm gonna put you down. Love you, girl. All right. Back to the gesso. So I am just gonna take this. Squirt some onto the surface to start. Take my little knife. You can get a straight knife. I have ones in a variety of shapes. I've got this guy right here too, all kinds of stuff. I tend to really, I've already managed to get gesso on myself. Did I get it on this dress? This dress does not yet have paint on it. I probably should have been wearing a one of my smocks, although that wouldn't have helped the sleeve. Sigh. Okay, it seems like it mostly got on my arm. I think the dress is safe. We'll find out later. And I'm just gonna start to spread more gesso. Love to spread it out. And it's gonna add this wonderful uniformity to the collage. It's gonna bring all of those pieces together and kind of meld them. It's like creating an omelet, a little omelet of paper, turning it into a whole bunch of different stuff into one thing. Getting this nice surface. And then the fun thing about the knives that have these different shapes to them is that you can get some fun textures out of whatever you're spreading. So the gesso in this case, trying to get that little, there we go. And you can really apply that. And I did that on the Queen painting. So there's ridges and lines in the gesso there, and that can add even more texture and interest without doing anything too crazy. But now you can see everything's starting to sort of blend together. It's still peeking through. You can tell I have this textured background. You can tell there's text on it. I'm actually gonna add just a smidge more here because I wanna hide a little bit of that. But that's one of the beauties of working with gesso in this way, is that I can kind of determine how thick the application is going to be, and therefore how much are you going to see through it. All right, and I do try to make sure that I cover up enough of the words so that if there was anything weird in the text that I wasn't paying attention to, it doesn't become a problem for me later. I think with the Queen, instead of using gesso, I actually think I used some chalk paint. I do recommend that whatever you use in this particular step, that it is matte, that it's got a matte finish instead of a shiny finish. If you use regular old white acrylic paint, you know, your typical, here, like just, this is a titanium white golden, it would leave a bit of a shiny surface once it dries, and that does not take as many different mediums when you're drawing or painting on it as the matte surface will. So I find that the matte surface is kind of grippier, and it's going to take whatever you want to add to it later. Doesn't mean you can't use whatever you want, including, you know, your typical acrylic paint. It just means that it might not grip as easily, and you may have more trouble using something like a colored pencil on top, or I did watercolor on the Queen and Neocolor pastel crayons and things like that, and they just might behave a little bit differently if your surface is not matte. Anyway, this is really all it is to get the surface prepped for something like the queen painting. You'll also see sometimes, not in this one, I think in the other one, some of my paper went off the edge. I usually trim that off, but I know certain artists who love to have the collage sort of escape the surface they're working on. There's one artist I particularly love, Jenny Grant, who does that frequently and very purposefully. So do what you want, use whatever paper you want. Make sure that you have enough spread over the top that when you start to paint on it, the background doesn't become too much of a distraction from that. But that's really the only reason I cover it up the way I do. And you'll see, like, I've got light blue and dark blue, and I've got that weird, wonderful envelope texture and craft paper and text, and it's all still there. It's just pushed back enough that now what I add on top of it's going to become more of the focal point. So I hope you learned something. I hope you found this interesting. The next time you see me working on one of those Alice in Wonderland characters on one of these surfaces, you're going to understand how I got there. If you have any questions or any additional tips or tricks that you want to share with people, please add them below in the comments. And the next time I see you, we will probably be working on yet another Alice in Wonderland character. Take care, everyone. Thanks.